I grew up in the city of Chicago, and I was born and raised there for the early years of my life. My mother worked as a waitress at a local diner, and my father worked as a metal grinder slash machinist, and it was difficult. I mean, we were going through difficult times, and with low-end paying jobs, I believe it was very difficult for them to raise their children. My mother had a son from a previous relationship who was my older brother, DJ, and my mom and dad had a child named Joseph, who was my younger brother, and then there's me. I went to elementary school in Mount Prospect, Illinois, and I went to high school in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. I went to school at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois, where I received my Bachelor's of Science in Psychology and a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. I believe those 5 years of my life were probably the best years of my life thus far. I think during those years I felt a sort of independence. I felt a sort of freedom away from my past and away from everything that I've experienced thus far. It was almost like it was a new start. Currently, I'm attending the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois, pursuing my Master of Social Work degree, and I couldn't ask for anything more. I currently work in the Residence Life Department at the University of St. Francis as a graduate assistant, while also working in the city of Chicago at a psychiatric hospital doing one-on-one and group counseling. On top of that, I work with children with autism, doing applied behavioral analysis within their homes. I believe I went into social work because of my past and my past experiences as a child, and I want to be able to help others and guide them through their struggles and their life experiences. So this is my story. My mother was born on October 17th, 1962, and she started using heroin at the age of 20. According to my family members, she started using heroin for the first time at a party. From then on, she was hooked. There have been multiple stories from multiple family members in reference to my mom, but since I was so young, I don't really remember a lot. So these stories are all that I really have to rely on. I believe that my mother was the type of person that wanted to get better, and she wanted to get healthy and, kick the habit, but that's easier said than done. When I was born, I had some sort of opiates in my system, and I know that my brother, when he was born with some sort of substance in his system, which I believe was heroin at the time. And as a result of that, the Department of Child and Family Services, DCFS, got involved within our family. Because the hospital and the doctors, they found drugs within my mom's system, my brother was taken away at birth and placed into a foster family's home, and I was taken away also. When I was placed into these two different foster homes, I experienced verbal and physical abuse. I would have weekly visits or bi-weekly visits with both of my parents, and I vaguely remember those at such a young age, but I do remember my mother always wanted to be engaged and always wanted to be attentive to my needs and what I was doing as a child. Very interactive. Finally, the courts, and with much fighting from my parents and family, I was finally placed in family placement with my aunt. I remember that we had good times, and my aunt was more loving than anybody can ask for, and any nephew could ever dream to have. And she had a son named Johnny, and a husband, my uncle. And we grew up in the city still, living in a small apartment. And I remember that one day that my life drastically changed forever. I remember in the small apartment that I had to share with my aunt and uncle and cousin at the time. And I remember I was sitting in my bed and my aunt came home, and you just get that feeling, even as a child, that something's wrong. She sat me down on the bed, and I remember her placing her hand on my knee, and she was crying. And I kept asking her, "Why are you crying? What's wrong?" And at that point, she told me that my mother had passed. According to my mother's death certificate, she passed away from an accidental death, which otherwise is known as an overdose. And there were opiates and cocaine within her system when the medical examiner completed their autopsy. At the time, my mother was alone when she passed away in the bathroom of her apartment. And I believe that day she didn't want to leave her children. She didn't want to end her life. And I know that she was the type of mother that wanted to give her children everything that she did not have. But at that moment, that simple mistake of using the drug heroin cost her her life. I remember the day of the funeral. It was somewhat dreary out. And I remember as a child having to see my mother be put down into her gravesite where she would rest. And I remember as a child that my father had to carry me away as I was kicking and screaming in my little black tuxedo, because at that age I still knew that that was the last time my mother would be with us. As you see your friends running around with their mom or their mom and dad, and maybe you attend a friend's birthday party and both parents are there, and that mom is kind of being a little bit too overprotective and wiping the child's face because there's cake all over it. And little times like those really dug deep for me. Oftentimes children would say, "Oh, well, you don't have a mom and you only have a dad." And when they would say those things, my significance level fell drastically, and I felt so much less than. And sometimes they would say things like, "Oh, well, you're a crack baby and you deserve not to have a mom." And things like that at such a young age, they can tear a child apart. So I think I carried that with me for quite some time. Throughout high school, I wanted to have that mother figure to tell me, "Be careful of who you date, and make sure you're a stand-up gentleman." And I played tennis in high school for a short while. I was never really any good, but at least I got involved. I always wished that she would have been there in the bleachers and in the sidelines cheering, because I know that she would be screaming just as loud as anybody else, if not louder. I missed having my mom when she saw me go to prom. And when I graduated college, I wanted her to be there. I remember walking down the aisle after I finally received my diploma, and I remember pointing up at the sky and thinking that this is for you. Sometimes I'll hear my friends say, "My mom is so annoying. She keeps texting me. And my mom just can't let things go. She's too much to handle." And it's times like those that I really begin to think, I wish I had that mom to text me. And I wish I had that mom to kind of break things down and tell me when I'm not doing something right, maybe. I've never had that mom. I've never had what other children have. And if anything, that is something that I truly miss. I think often we don't understand that we need to experience loss in order to learn. And I believe my story, if it can help one other person or two other people, that's worth it in itself. I want people to understand the effects that one simple mistake can have on the rest of your life. And when you make those mistakes, you're not just affecting yourself and your health, you're affecting those people that care about you. Because my mother's mistake has affected me every single day. Using my past experiences, going into social work is my calling. I want to be able to help others with drug addiction, or children that have lost a parent, or children that have experienced physical or verbal abuse. But I believe there's something positive to be said, that without the hurt and the negative experiences from my past, I wouldn't be here today. And my life could potentially look drastically different. But I'm here today. My past is my past. And the only thing I can do is use it and make a better future.
Something always brings me back to you. It never takes too long. No matter what I say or do, I still feel you here till the moment I'm gone. You hold me without touch, you keep me without chains. I never wanted anything so much than to drown in your love and not feel your